Good morning, family and friends, and welcome to the celebration of Elma, to Elma's life story. And welcome especially to those friends of Elma who's traveled from far and wide to show their last respects. When we are born with the gift of life. And when that life comes to an end, we roll up our tent and move on to where we believe we are departing to. The beginning and end we have no control over. But what we do have control over is our life in between, and that becomes our life story. And that is exactly why we are here today, is to celebrate Elma's life story. A short poem by Maya Angelou. A human in harmony with the spirit is like a river flowing. She goes where she will without pretense and arrives at her destination prepared to be herself and only herself. If I could kindly request that all cell phones be switched off or be switched onto silent mode. So the order of events are Lester Sylvester will be singing Imagine by John Lennon. Thank you.
Yes, it's on. Can you hear me? Great. My deepest sympathy to Elma and her family. If you could just give me a few seconds to sort myself out here quickly. So I'm sure everybody knows the song Imagine by John Lennon. If you don't, you must be really, really young. But feel free to sing along. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Come on, sing along with me. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us and the world will live as one. Thank you.
We'll have our first tribute, which will be given by Zina Skaltz.
Thank you very much, Leston, for that lovely rendition of Imagine. It epitomizes Elma's dedication to a better world. And she did try and make the world a better place. So in my tribute to her, I will focus on key moments in her life which served as turning points that took her life in very many different directions. She had a very long and varied life. So my first focus will be on her childhood. Elma Annetta Carolissen was born in Kensington on the 22nd of July, 1927, to Henry and Annie Carolissen. She was an only child. She, however, grew up in Paarl. Her mother died when she was 4 years old, and she was left in the care of her grandparents and other close relatives in Paarl, as her father was away often. He worked as a chef on the trains, and he lived in Salt River. And she would, when she was a little older, about 10 years old, we all know Elma as being a very independent person, she would get on that train at 10 years old to go and visit her father and spend the weekend with him. So her primary school years were mostly spent in Paarl. Her teenage years were spent with her father in Salt River. She had a very unconventional upbringing. Her father being on the way on the trains most of the time, Elma was often left to her own devices, and she needed to find ways of living her life. Her father had girlfriends which looked after her as surrogate mothers. In Paarl, she came from an Afrikaans-speaking environment, and so she had great difficulty when she went to high school to adjust to the English medium schools in Cape Town. She attended Zonnebloem, then Trafalgar High, and thereafter Hewitt Teaching Training College. Music and singing was her great joy during those years. She was very disappointed. She actually really wanted to go to university, but her father was not prepared to take out a loan to fund her university studies. And so she said she threw herself into her music, and eventually she took to the teaching, but it was not her first choice. After her qualification, she got a job at a church school for a short stint in 1949. And then, along with 6 other teachers, she started a new school in Elsies River called Norwood Central Primary School. And that is where my connection with Elma comes in. My father taught at the same school. And when she returned from exile, she came to look up the family, as was her practice in seeking out people that she could relate to and align with. The school served a poor community. Here she was recruited by Dan Neethling to join the Teachers League of South Africa, TLSA. She also attended the New Era Fellowship meetings where they focused on analyzing and discussing the vital socio-political issues of the day that would counter the ideas propagated by the ruling class. Elma also subsequently became a member of SOYA, Society of Young Africa. She was very active in the Parent-Teacher Association, which the TLSA formed to mobilize the parents. She became the secretary in the branch there. And through her involvement with the TLSA, she became acquainted with the senior members of the non-European unity movement to which the TLSA was affiliated. Another turning point. She was gradually drawn into the activities of the TLSA. But in 1952, this was another turning point for her. Elma attended a rally of affiliated organizations of the NUM, or the non-European Unity Movement, to launch the boycott campaign against the Jan van Riebeeck Festival. She recalls observing Dr. Ghulam Gul addressing the huge crowd. According to her, the address was a systematic portrayal of our oppression over the years. She was enthralled and inspired. The meeting called on the people to urge members in their organizations to boycott the Van Riebeeck festivals. The call was, as she recalls, that we can never be a party to our own oppression. She was thrilled by the speech. This experience prompted her then to join that New Era Fellowship. As I indicated, a forum where young and old met to discuss and analyze topical issues of the day. She was no longer satisfied to do political work among teachers only. She became an activist. She sold the torch door to door. She was involved in all the rallies against those burning points and the terrible laws that came down hard and fast. Among them were the Bantu Authority Act, the Pass Laws, and the Bantu Education Act. Her intensified political work had consequences, because for her she found that the non-racial component of the movement was an eye-opener, because here finally people could engage as human beings and not as labels, black, white, colored, Indian, whatever. The consequences, her father did not approve, and he kicked her out of the house, which was a terrible wrench for her. Fortunately, they were reconciled later on after a chance meeting on the parade, and where they began chatting to each other again, and she started visiting him. But by then, she was totally dependent, living her own life, and of course, organizing. Elma met Karim Esak at a regional meeting of the Unity Movement in Cape Town, and in 1957, she left for Durban to live with him as his wife. A new phase in her life, another turning point. A new phase of political work in a different province. She taught while Karim pursued his legal studies, and their home became a meeting place for political organization. After qualifying as a lawyer, Karim had set up office in Verulam, where he made contact with clients who had connections in Ponderland. Many of them were people who had been in the 1960s Ponderland revolt. When Abdusa formed in 1961, many peasants joined the organization. According to Elma, they were eager to take up arms to fight the regime. The burning issues in those days was the Bantu Authorities Act and land hunger. As a member of the Abdusa, the main aim was also to mobilize the workers. They were involved, and here if you'd give me a moment, I'd lift the other part of my... They were involved with the nurses' struggle, opposing the Separate Nursing Registration Act. The implication of the act was inferior certificates and lower salaries, of course. As the attention of the special branch intensified, meetings became more clandestine. And as Karim was banned by that time and his movements were limited, Elma was the one who had to convey messages to and fro between representatives of the organization. Elma, along with Karim, fled into exile in the 1960s, after all organizations involved in the liberation movement were banned. She was in exile for nearly 30 years, 12 spent in Zambia, 8 in Tanzania, and the rest of the time in Zimbabwe. During that time, along with Karim, she traveled to many countries such as Libya, Iraq, Korea, China, and Europe, seeking support for the unity movement cause. Some may be aware that the Organization of African Unity did not recognize the unity movement as a liberation movement, and so they were forced to look elsewhere for support. On her return to South Africa, she did not formally join any organization. However, she remained a critical voice and maintained a keen interest on developments in the country, always guided by the tenets of non-racialism and principled struggle. Elma passed away on 5 March 2023 at the age of 95. A long and eventful life, and I'm sure her contribution will carry on. Thank you.
Thanks, Zina, for that most enlightening history of Elma. You've certainly made us aware of many aspects of Elma's life. And today we've heard so many important facts about how much she was involved in the liberation struggle and also contributing towards our freedom as well. So I call on Patrick Ricketts. Thank you.
Good morning, all family and friends. I don't have much to say about Auntie Elma because I actually don't know how I met her, what the circumstances were, but what I know, before I left the country, Auntie Elma was a bit of a person that had, well, the family were very negatively speaking about her and Paul, you know, she's a rebel, what. And when I left into exile, I was looking for her, but I didn't know where to find her. And I don't know, I cannot recall how I found her or she found me. But we established a relationship, and that was in Harare. She yearned for family, you know. She wanted to have family around her. And she was alone at that time. Uncle Karim was in Tanzania, and he used to visit her in Harare. And I would transit in Harare and would always visit her. And she was, I don't know, like mother hen, you know. Yeah, you look scruffy, you must take out the clothes. You know, when I pass there, I will have a little bag with a spare trousers and one I'm wearing. She would make me undress, she would wash that clothes or go and buy something, you know. And Auntie Elma, what are you? You know, that's what she used to tell me. So that way she used to look after me. And so every time I would pass there, I wouldn't stay in any transit facility of the ANC. I would stay with her in Harare. And yeah, eventually we came home. And yeah, I used to spend every week, or she would spend with me once or twice a week. And then in 1998, I was poisoned whilst serving in the Defense Force. And she would come every week because I was alone. I had 2 sons, and I was alone with them. She would come to do our washing. She would arrange a meal for us and arrange with the neighbors to prepare food every day for us, because for 21 hours of the day I was asleep. We were poisoned. And yeah, then I was transferred to Pretoria. So we lost a little bit of contact, but we were always calling each other. And well, she lost the hearing, so even our calls became less. But whenever I was in Cape Town, I would visit her, and then eventually I found her in an old age home. So the last time I was with her was in February this year. But she looked quite chippy. I know but she couldn't hear well, so I used to whisper in her ear, you know. And there was an old lady sitting next to us, and the old lady used to look at us, and Elma would say, "Hey, mind your business." That way, you know. So, but she was a very kind person, very warm person, and yeah, I think because of loneliness, we were all very lonely in exile, you know. There was always a yearn, you want to know your family, and I think that bonded us a lot in exile. Yeah, so I don't know. Actually, they left in 1964 when Uncle Karim got a 10-year banning order, and they passaged through Kasane in Botswana. So I go every 3 months to Kasane because I also passaged through Kasane when I went into exile. Yeah. Thank you. I want to thank the family and the comrades for what they meant to I am.
Thanks, Patrick, for sharing your memories with us and taking you back to your struggle days as well, and how Elma took care of you during your moments when you needed the most. Lynette, Elaine, will you be doing it?
Good morning, everybody. I'm speaking on behalf of Lynette Henkerman. She's the granddaughter of the late Mr. and Mrs. H.M. Surti, Uncle Liney and Auntie Janie. Becky, as many knew her then. I would like to welcome and thank you all for joining us in celebrating the life of Auntie Elma. I don't know where to begin. I've known her for 40 years of my life. On behalf of my grandparents, children, and grandchildren, she was not only mama, cousin, but an aunt, a teacher, a guide, protector, and a provider. She was not always understood by many, as she was very stern in all her ways, taking everything serious. For me as a child, she would monitor my schoolwork, book neatly covered and labeled, neat handwriting, is the homework done? My bedroom, referring to Lynette's bedroom, bed made up neatly, like in the army. I used to tell my mama, Auntie Elma wants me to make hospital beds. My shoes, as they are polished and shining, I tell her, I'm not in the Navy. I would lay over my books whilst doing my homework. Elma, sit up straight. Hold your pen properly. Me, now, Lynette, stop interfering in my life. Believe it or not, I had, people say she was a serious person. I had to fry a tray of eggs, 30 eggs for breakfast, when she and her colleagues would come to the farm in Lusaka. Yeah, there was that one day I decided to work fast, as I had to make cheese toast and fry eggs. So I made cheese sandwiches and put them on the oven. But the pan on the stove, put them in the oven, but the pan on the stove broke 2 eggs at a time, not knowing that Auntie Elma was watching me. I flipped the eggs instead of splash. The oil on top of the eggs. Yo, I never ran so fast out of the kitchen. She chased me with the egg lifter. She was teaching me to crochet a cap. In the end, it turned into a doily. Mamma mia. Elma, concentrate, child. Lynette, here's Auntie Elma looking down. Elma, look at me when I'm talking. Here's Auntie Elma frowning. Elma, and pull that face right. Yes, Auntie Elma, with a fake smile. She was so caring. She brought me stainless steel pot because it was good for the brain. I know I'm not clever. Well, anybody who knew her well remember her for her Chinese dancing, the Kung Fu. So my children called it every morning 5 o'clock. I will always love and fondly remember her. May your sweet soul rest in eternal peace. Oh yeah, and one more thing. She phoned me last year to scold me for not phoning her, to remind her to phone her for my birthday. What a lady. Love you always, Auntie Elma. I won't forget to phone you on my birthday. Then I've got the tribute from, who's this now? This comes from Joe Jacobs. Elma Carolissen. It was with a deep sense of sadness that I learned of the passing of Elma Carolissen this week, a stalwart of the liberation struggle in this country. I met Elma soon after I had graduated as a young teacher, and I'd become involved in the DSU, the Durban Students' Union, an affiliate of the NEUM, the Non-European Unity Movement at the time. In fact, she started teaching at the St. Augustine's Primary School, but it was not in the area that we were to become more involved. I soon joined the ranks of SOYA, Society of Young Africa, an intellectual think tank where we had intense discussions on the state of politics in this country and internationally, and reviewed the capitalist and socialist systems as well as the literature. The senior leadership of the movement were intimately involved and inspiration. Soon, I was a regular visitor at the home of Elma and Karim Isak in Alfred Avenue in Berea, Durban, together with colleague Clive Wada and Mac Reddy. Elma and Karim were the most senior members on the executive of the movement. We were always welcome and treated most cordially. As the political situation intensified, our duties became more focused. The establishment of APOSA, the African People's Democratic Union of Southern Africa, meant greater risks and security measures. I remember trips to the Transkei to communicate childlessly with the leadership, including Hanunu and Chochi, and picking up members of the leadership of the Transkei peasants to interact with Elma and Karim. From then, we got reports of the ongoing war with the defense force of the apartheid regime and the activities and the atrocities committed by the latter. We also had meetings at the dead of night with peasants in southern KZN, and on an occasion took all Fattar, the Secretary General, with us. But we also worked intensely in the working class area in Durban, in densely populated areas such as Avuka and Bayhead. Karim had built up some significant contacts with trade union leaders as well. We were now in a new era. The peasants were committed and signing up thousands. but it was clear that they would not be satisfied with anything less than being armed to conduct an armed struggle. To this end, and on instruction, we surveyed a route out of the country and actually went into Swaziland, myself and, who was it? Carl Brecker and Sybil, and reported back to Karim and Elma. The special branch were now rampant in raiding our homes and terrorizing our families. Soon we served with banning orders, and Elma and Karim had no option but to flee the country. Their outstanding contribution to the liberation struggle has yet to inadequately be recorded. Obviously, communications broke down, but the commitment to liberation and the deals of the free and just society were envisaged, has remained, and always advocated in our places of work or at every social opportunity. I met Karim briefly when he visited South Africa later, but did not keep in regular contact. Fortunately, I saw Elma more often, and she was always delighted with these brief visits as they were. Nevertheless, we would have tea together at the flat and chats about various issues. I was struck by the clarity of her mind despite her age. On behalf of myself and comrades of the Unity Movement in KZN, we salute this warrior who contributed so much to the liberation of this country. Joe Jacobs. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Eileen, for reading that tribute by Joe from Durban, and also reading Lynette's tribute on our behalf. Lynette, I understand what you went through with Elma. I'm sure many of us experienced Elma's other side of her. I know I was one of those who received a phone call one day, and I was reminded, why am I not visiting her? Yeah, so thanks for that, Lynette. We will have another musical rendition by Lester, and he will sing You Raise Me Up.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and stay a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be. Thank you.
Thanks, Lester. That was an emotional one. I'm sure it brought many of us to tears. Okay, Jack will be doing the thanks now.
Goeiemorgen allemaal. Good morning everybody, friends, family, acquaintances and colleagues. I would like to, on behalf of the family, thank the following people. Number one, the staff of Helen Keller Home for Senior Citizens, where Alma spent the five last years of her life. To Leston Sylvester, for honoring the memory of Alma, so beautiful in the two songs. Thank you. Hayley Williams for the design and printing of the program. SD Audio and lighting for their streaming services. The Undertakers, AFBOB, for the professional way in which they conducted all the arrangements. For all of those who sent flowers, messages, condolences, and phone calls, as well as those who provided support in various ways during the time of bereavement. All of you who are present here today and those who are watching the proceedings online, as well as those who came from far to show their respects to Elma. Before I conclude this thanks, I just want to say, we thank you, Elma, for everything you were and all you gave. You will always be dearly loved and terribly missed by the family. And also, after the burial, we would like to invite you all to return here for a cup of tea. The burial site will be at the Maitland Cemetery, gate 10. As you go out of here, you will turn left and you will proceed down Voortrekker Road, right down to the end before you get a robot. It will be on your right-hand side. Thank you very much. I will now call all the pallbearers that will carry the coffin out of the chapel. Lynette Henkeman, Eberl Hermanus, Helene Carolissen, Daria Survey, Zina Scholz, and Wilhelmina Esterhuizen. Thank you very much.